You know, there's something extraordinarily strange happening in our lives that we've all become so accustomed to that we no longer notice it. We've become available, completely, utterly, relentlessly available to everyone, at all times, for all things. Your phone buzzes, and what do? You look. Someone calls, and even if you're in the middle of something meaningful, there's this compulsion to answer. An email arrives, and suddenly you're pulled away from wherever you were, whatever you were doing, whoever you were being. Now, I want you to consider something quite radical. What if this availability, this constant readiness to respond, to react, to be at the beck and call of the entire world, what if this is making you disappear? Not physically, of course, but disappear in the sense that matters most. You become so available to everyone else that you become unavailable to yourself. And in becoming unavailable to yourself, you cease to exist in any real sense. You become a kind of phantom, a switchboard operator for other people's demands, a servant to the perpetual ping of notifications. Think about water for a moment. When water is spread too thin across a vast surface, it evaporates, doesn't it? It loses its depth, its substance. It becomes vapor, mist, nothing you can hold. But when water gathers in one place, when it pools and deepens, it becomes something powerful. It reflects the sky. It sustains life. It has weight and presence. You are like that water. When you spread yourself too thin, making yourself available to every demand, every request, every interruption, you evaporate. You lose your substance. But when you gather yourself, when you become unavailable to the noise and fully available to what truly matters, you become deep again. You become real. The irony, and oh, what a delicious irony it is that we've been taught that being available is a virtue. Being responsive, being helpful, being there for others, these are good things, aren't they? And yes, of course, in their proper measure. But we've taken it to such an extreme that we've lost the plot entirely. We've confused being available with being good, with being valuable, with being worthy of love and respect. And so we make ourselves endlessly available, hoping that this availability will make us matter, will make us important, will prove our worth. But here's what actually happens. The more available you are, the less valuable you become. Not because people are cruel or calculating, though sometimes they are, but because of a simple principle that governs all of existence. Things that are always available lose their preciousness. Air is everywhere, and we don't think about it until it's gone. Water flows from every tap, and we waste it carelessly. But show someone a single flower blooming in the desert, and they'll stop in wonder. Scarcity creates value, not because we're shallow, but because limitation forces us to pay attention, to appreciate, to see what's actually there. When you're always available, you train the world to treat you as though you have no value. You become like the air taken for granted, unnoticed, only missed when you're suddenly absent. People interrupt you because they know you'll allow it. They make demands because they know you'll accommodate them. They disrespect your time because you've taught them that your time has no boundaries, no sanctity, no special significance. Now, I'm not suggesting you become a hermit or an egotist, withdrawing from all human contact and declaring yourself too important for the concerns of others. That's just availability in reverse, isn't it? The same sickness wearing a different mask. What I'm pointing to is something far more subtle and far more profound. It's about understanding that your presence, your real presence, is the most valuable thing you have to offer. And you cannot be truly present when you're scattered across 1,000 different demands and distractions. Let me tell you what happens when you stop being available in that scattered, evaporated sense. First, there's panic. Your own panic. Because you've built your entire identity around being needed, being responsive, being the person who's always there. When you step back from that role, you feel guilty. You feel selfish. You imagine that everything will fall apart without your constant availability. You picture disappointed faces, angry messages, opportunities lost. But here's the remarkable thing, it doesn't fall apart. The world continues spinning. People solve their own problems. What seemed urgent yesterday reveals itself to have been trivial. And the truly important things, they wait. They respect your boundaries. Real emergencies are rare. Real relationships understand that you're a human being, not a service desk. And in that space, that wonderful, terrifying space that opens up when you stop being constantly available, something extraordinary happens. You meet yourself again, perhaps for the first time in years. You discover that beneath all that frantic responding and reacting, there's someone there. Someone with thoughts that need time to develop, feelings that need space to be felt, creativity that needs silence to emerge. The people in your life begin to change too. Some of them, the ones who only valued your availability, not your presence, they fall away. And that feels like loss at first, doesn't it? But what you're actually losing is the burden of false relationships, connections that were never really connections at all, but merely transactions. You were the vendor, they were the customer, and availability was the product you sold. But others, the others, they step forward with new respect, new appreciation. Because when you're not always available, your presence becomes a gift rather than an expectation. When you show up, you really show up. You're not half there, one eye on your phone, mind scattered across a dozen different obligations. You're fully present, fully engaged, and that full presence is so rare, so precious in this fragmented world that people feel it immediately. They feel seen, heard, met in a way that your scattered availability could never provide. Your energy changes too. This is something people rarely talk about, but it's absolutely crucial. When you're constantly available, you're in a perpetual state of reaction. You're waiting for the next demand, the next interruption, the next thing that will pull you out of yourself. This creates a kind of tension in your whole being, a tightness, a readiness to jump, to respond, to shift direction at a moment's notice. You become like a guitar string wound too tight, vibrating with anxiety, never at rest. Living in this state drains you in ways you don't even recognize until you stop. It's not just that answering emails or taking calls requires energy, though it does. It's that the constant availability itself, that perpetual openness to interruption, keeps you in a state of low-grade emergency. Your nervous system never fully relaxes. You never sink into depth, into flow, into that delicious state of absorption where time disappears and you become one with what you're doing. When you reclaim your unavailability, and I use that word deliberately because you must reclaim it, it doesn't just happen. You give your nervous system permission to stand down, to rest, to stop scanning the horizon for incoming demands. And in that rest, your natural vitality returns. Not the frantic energy of reaction, but the deep, sustainable energy that comes from being centered in yourself. You begin to notice things you'd stop seeing. The quality of light at different times of day, the way your own thoughts develop when you give them room to breathe, the texture of experience when you're not constantly being pulled out of it. It's as though you've been living in a tiny, crowded room, and suddenly you step outside and realize there's an entire landscape you'd forgotten existed. Here's another thing that shifts. Your decisions improve dramatically. When you're constantly available, constantly responding, you make decisions from a place of pressure and reactivity. Someone wants something from you, and you say yes before you've even considered whether it aligns with what you actually want, what actually matters to you. You're operating on automatic pilot, and automatic pilot always chooses the path of least immediate resistance, which is usually to accommodate, to comply, to make yourself available. But when you create space, when you allow yourself to be unavailable to immediate demands, you can actually think. You can feel into whether something is right for you. You can distinguish between what's truly important and what's merely urgent. And these are almost never the same thing. The urgent screams at you, the important waits quietly, hoping you'll notice it. When you're always available, you never hear that quiet voice of importance. It gets drowned out by the screaming urgency of everything else. People will test your new unavailability, of course. They'll push against it. This is natural. You've trained them to expect instant access, and now you're changing the rules. They'll tell you it's urgent. They'll express disappointment or frustration. They might even suggest that you're being selfish or difficult. And you'll feel that old pull, that old guilt, that voice inside saying, see, you should just be available. It's easier. It keeps everyone happy. But here's what that voice doesn't tell you. Keeping everyone else happy by being constantly available means making yourself deeply unhappy. It means living in a state of perpetual fragmentation, never whole, never complete, never fully yourself. And what's the point of a life lived like that? What's the point of being so available to everyone else that you're never available to your own existence? The universe itself, if you observe it carefully, doesn't operate on the principle of constant availability. The sun doesn't shine all the time, there's night. The tide doesn't come in constantly, there's ebb and flow. Winter follows autumn, things grow and then they rest. Nature understands rhythm, understands boundaries, understands that unavailability is not the opposite of generosity, but its necessary complement. The field that lies fallow this season will be fertile next season. The artist who disappears into solitude returns with something worth sharing. You are part of nature, not separate from it, though we've forgotten this so completely. We think we can override natural rhythms with artificial availability, with being always on, with eliminating all boundaries between work and rest, between self and other, between giving and receiving. And then we wonder why we're exhausted, why we feel empty, why nothing satisfies us anymore. When you stop being available, you're not withdrawing from life. You're actually becoming available for life, for your life, for the actual living of it, rather than the endless managing of everyone else's demands upon it. You're creating the conditions in which something real can happen, in which you can be touched by experience, rather than skating across its surface. There's a particular kind of loneliness that comes from being constantly available. It seems paradoxical, doesn't it? You're surrounded by people, constantly in contact, always connected, and yet profoundly alone. That's because you're not connecting from a real place. You're connecting from that scattered, fragmented, reactive place that isn't really you at all. It's just a collection of responses and accommodations. Real connection requires presence, and presence requires unavailability to everything except what's right in front of you, right now, in this moment. Think about the last time you had a truly meaningful conversation with someone. Not the quick exchanges, the surface pleasantries, the efficient transfer of information. I mean, a real conversation where something genuine was shared, where you felt seen and heard and met. I guarantee you that both parties were, in that moment, unavailable. Unavailable to phones, to other demands, to the pull of elsewhere. That unavailability created a container, a sacred space within which real meeting could occur. This is what you're offering when you stop being constantly available. The possibility of real presence, real connection, real experience, not just for others, but for yourself. You're saying, in effect, I matter enough to be here fully. This moment matters enough to be lived completely. This life matters enough to be actually lived rather than merely managed. And something else happens, something quite magical, really. When you establish this unavailability, your work improves, your creativity flourishes. The things you create or contribute when you're fully present, when you've gathered yourself into depth rather than spreading yourself into vapor, these things have a quality that scattered availability can never produce. You see, real work, meaningful work, creative work, work that matters requires sustained attention. It requires that you disappear into what you're doing, that you become so absorbed that time stops and there's no separation between you and the task. The Japanese have a word for this, but every culture has recognized it. That state of flow where you're not trying, not forcing, not thinking about it, but simply doing, and the doing is effortless and perfect. You cannot enter this state when you're constantly available. Flow requires a closed door, a silent phone, a boundary between you and the world's demands. It requires what looks from the outside like unavailability, but from the inside it's the most profound availability imaginable. Complete availability to the work, to the moment, to the creative force moving through you. The people who've created the most meaningful things in human history understood this instinctively. They disappeared. They had their unavailable periods, not because they were antisocial or selfish, but because they understood that the gifts they had to give required gathering themselves, going deep, becoming unavailable to distraction so they could be completely available to their calling. But we've lost this understanding in our modern hysteria for constant connection. We think being always available makes us more productive, more valuable, more successful. And what actually happens? We produce more, certainly more emails, more responses, more busy work, but create less. We mistake activity for accomplishment, responding for contributing, being busy for being effective. There's a deep fear underneath all this availability, and we need to look at it clearly. It's the fear that if we're not constantly available, we'll be forgotten, we'll become irrelevant, we'll miss out on something crucial. The world will move on without us, and we'll be left behind, alone, unnecessary. This fear is a lie, but it's a very persuasive lie. It hooks into our ancient survival mechanisms, the part of us that knows that being cast out from the tribe means death. So we make ourselves endlessly available, hoping that our availability will secure our place, will prove our worth, will guarantee we won't be abandoned. But notice what actually happens. The more available you are, the less special you become. You're not securing your place. You're eroding it. You're teaching people that you have no preferences, no boundaries, no inner life that might be more important than their immediate convenience. You're making yourself generic, interchangeable, forgettable. When you become unavailable, selectively, intelligently, with intention, you become interesting again. You become someone with depth, with inner resources, with a life that doesn't revolve entirely around servicing others. You become paradoxically more attractive, more valued, more sought after, because scarcity, as I said earlier, creates value. But more importantly than how others perceive you, much more importantly, you become available to yourself. You rediscover that you have preferences, desires, interests that have nothing to do with responding to others. You remember what it feels like to be absorbed in something for its own sake, not because it's useful or productive or beneficial, but simply because it calls to you. This is where your aliveness lives, in that place of absorption, of genuine interest, of being so involved in something that self-consciousness disappears. When you're constantly available, you're always self-conscious, always aware of obligations, expectations, the next thing demanding your attention. You're never free to lose yourself, and losing yourself is where you actually find yourself. Children understand this naturally. Watch a child at play, truly at play, not managed play or scheduled play, but the kind of spontaneous absorption where they become completely lost in their imaginary world. They're unavailable in those moments. Try to interrupt them, and you're pulling them out of something sacred. We dismiss this as mere play, as though it's trivial. But that child is doing something we've forgotten how to do. They're being completely present, completely absorbed, completely alive. We think we've evolved beyond this need, that adulthood means being constantly available and responsible. But we haven't evolved beyond it. We've devolved away from it. We've forgotten that presence is the point, that aliveness is what we're here for, that all the productivity and responsibility in the world means nothing if we're not actually living, actually present, actually here. When you stop being available in that scattered, reactive way, you might find that you become interested in things again. Genuinely interested, not because they're useful or impressive, but because they fascinate you. You might pick up a book and read for hours, not for self-improvement or professional development, but simply because the ideas delight you. You might take a walk with no destination, no fitness goal, no ulterior motive, just walking, noticing, being. These might seem like small things, even trivial things, but they're not. They're everything. They're the actual substance of a life, the moments that matter, the experiences that nourish you at a level deeper than accomplishment or achievement ever could. And you cannot have them when you're constantly available, when every moment is potentially subject to interruption, when you're never fully released into the present. Your relationships deepen too in unexpected ways. When you're not constantly available, the time you do spend with people becomes more intentional, more meaningful. You're not just fitting them in between other obligations, half present while your mind races through everything else you need to do. You're actually there, actually with them, and they feel the difference. People hunger for real attention, real presence. We're starving for it. Actually, in this world of constant partial attention, where everyone's physically present but mentally absent, where every interaction is interrupted by notifications and the pull of elsewhere, when you offer someone your full presence, which you can only do when you've made yourself unavailable to everything else, it's like water in a desert. It's what we're all desperately seeking and so rarely finding. And here's perhaps the deepest truth of all. When you stop being available to everything, you become available to nothing. And nothing, that pregnant emptiness, that spacious silence, is where everything genuinely new comes from. All creativity, all insight, all genuine understanding emerges from nothing, not from the constant accumulation of information and stimulation, not from the endless busyness of responding and reacting, but from emptiness, from silence, from the space between things. When you're constantly available, constantly filling every moment with response and reaction, you eliminate the space from which anything new might emerge. The great discoveries, the profound insights, the moments of clarity, they don't come when you're frantically busy. They come in the shower, on a walk, in that moment just before sleep when your mind finally stops churning. They come from unavailability, From those moments when you're not trying to do anything, not available to any demand, just present to the open spaciousness of existence. We're terrified of this spaciousness. We fill every moment with noise, with distraction, with availability to something, anything, rather than face the silence. Because in that silence, we might have to confront ourselves. We might have to feel what we're actually feeling, think what we're actually thinking, face what we've been running from through all this frantic availability. But this confrontation, this meeting with yourself in the silence, this is where transformation happens. Not in the doing, the responding, the constant activity, but in the being, the witnessing, the willingness to be present to what actually is. When you make yourself unavailable to distraction, you become available to reality, your reality, the truth of your existence, the actual experience of being alive. There's a kind of poverty in constant availability, a spiritual poverty. You're always giving out, always responding, always serving, but never receiving, never replenishing, never allowing yourself to be filled. It's as though you're a well that everyone draws from, but that never receives rain, never connects to the deep aquifer beneath. Eventually you run dry, and then you wonder why you feel depleted, exhausted, empty, despite all your activity. When you become unavailable to demands, to distractions, to the world's constant pull, you create the conditions for replenishment. You allow yourself to receive, to be filled by silence, by beauty, by the simple presence of your own existence. This isn't selfish, it's essential. You cannot give what you don't have. You cannot offer real presence when you're running on empty. You cannot love others genuinely when you've abandoned yourself. The paradox is complete. In becoming unavailable, you become truly available, available to depth, to meaning, to genuine connection, to your own life. The scattered availability we've been practicing is not real availability at all. It's a kind of absence, pretending to be presence, a fragmentation masquerading as connection. So what does this look like practically? It looks like turning off notifications. It looks like having hours in your day when you're unreachable. It looks like saying no to things that don't truly matter, even when saying no is uncomfortable. It looks like protecting your time, your energy, your attention as the precious resources they are. It looks like choosing depth over breadth, presence over productivity, being over doing. It looks like trusting that the world will not collapse if you're unavailable for a few hours. It looks like believing that you're valuable not because of your constant responsiveness, but because of your inherent existence. It looks like understanding that your presence, your real, gathered, deep presence, is worth infinitely more than your scattered, reactive availability. And here's what you'll discover. When you stop being available to everything, everything that truly matters becomes available to you. The beauty you'd stopped noticing, the joy you'd been too busy to feel, the peace that was always there beneath the frenzy, the love that deepens when it's given from fullness rather than depletion, the creativity that flows when there's space for it to emerge, the clarity that comes when your mind isn't constantly jumping from one demand to another. Your life doesn't become smaller when you stop being constantly available. It becomes larger, deeper, richer, more real. Because you're actually living it now, actually present for it, actually here, not scattered across 1,000 different demands and obligations, but gathered, whole, complete in each moment. This is not about becoming unavailable to life, it's about becoming available for life. Your life, the one you're actually living, not the one you're managing from a distance while being constantly interrupted. The life that's happening right now, in this moment, which is the only moment there ever is. And in that availability to your own life, to your own presence, to your own existence, you find what you've been seeking all along through all that frantic availability. You find yourself, not the scattered, reactive self that's always responding to others, but the deep self, the whole self, the self that exists prior to all demands and obligations and expectations. This self doesn't need to prove its worth through constant availability. It knows its worth is inherent, inalienable, complete. This self can give genuinely because it gives from fullness, not from the desperate hope that giving will make it valuable. This self can receive because it's not constantly broadcasting, not constantly in output mode, not terrified of the silence. This self can rest, can be still, can do nothing and feel no guilt because it understands that being is not less than doing. It's the ground from which all meaningful doing emerges. This self can say no, can establish boundaries, can protect its inner life because it values that inner life more than it values universal approval. So I invite you to experiment with unavailability, not as a withdrawal from life, but as a return to it. Start small if you need to, an hour with your phone off, a morning without checking email, a walk with no destination and no device. Notice what happens in that space. Notice what emerges when you're not constantly filling the emptiness with response and reaction. You might be surprised by what you find. You might find creativity you thought was gone. You might find peace you'd forgotten was possible. You might find yourself that self you'd been too busy, too available, too scattered to notice. And in finding yourself gathered and whole and present, you might discover that this presence, this wholeness, this being fully here, this is what you've been seeking all along. Not in the constant availability, not in the endless responding, not in making yourself perpetually accessible to everyone and everything, but here, in the gathered depth of your own existence, in the silence that's full rather than empty, in the unavailability that makes real availability possible. When you stop being available to everything, you become available to the only thing that truly matters, this moment, this life, this precious, irreplaceable experience of being alive. And that finally is enough. More than enough, everything.
There's a strange cruelty in the way we've been taught to think about rest. Somewhere along the line, we absorb this idea that stopping, even for a moment, even when we're utterly depleted, is a kind of moral failure, a weakness, a surrender to laziness or lack of discipline or insufficient character. And so we push through. We keep going when our odors are screaming at us to stop. We force ourselves forward when every fiber of our being is asking for pause. And we tell ourselves that this is strength, this is determination, this is what it means to be a good person, a valuable person, a person worth something in this world. But here's what nobody tells you. The exhaustion you're feeling, the bone-deep tiredness that sleep doesn't fix, that weekends don't touch, that vacations barely dent, it's not just physical fatigue. It's not something that rest can fix because you've been convinced that rest itself is the problem. You've internalized this voice, haven't you? The one that says if you rest, you're giving up. If you stop, you're failing. If you allow yourself to do nothing, you're wasting your life, squandering your potential, letting everyone down. And so rest becomes impossible. Because every time you try to rest, every time you even think about resting, that voice starts up. You sit down for 5 minutes, and immediately you're thinking about all the things you should be doing. You try to relax, and your mind fills with guilt, with anxiety, with this nagging sense that you're doing something wrong. You finally give yourself permission to take a break, and you spend the entire break feeling terrible about taking it. The rest doesn't restore you because you can't actually rest. You can only perform rest while simultaneously punishing yourself for needing it. Look at how you talk to yourself when you're tired. Really, listen to the commentary running in your head. It's harsh, isn't it? Brutal even. You never speak to another person the way you speak to yourself when you're exhausted. If a friend came to you and said they were tired, truly tired, worn down to nothing, you'd have compassion for them. You'd tell them to rest, to take care of themselves, to stop pushing so hard. But when it's you, when it's your exhaustion, your depletion, your desperate need for pause, you have no mercy. You tell yourself to toughen up, to push through, to stop being so weak. And the terrible thing is that this cruelty, this refusal to allow yourself rest, it doesn't actually make you more productive. It doesn't make you stronger or more capable or more successful. It just makes you more exhausted. You're running on fumes, operating at a fraction of your capacity, dragging yourself through days in a fog of fatigue. But you won't stop because stopping feels like failure. So you keep going, getting less done, doing lower quality work, making more mistakes, feeling more overwhelmed, and all the while telling yourself that if you just try harder, if you just push more, if you just refuse to give up, eventually you'll break through to the other side. But there is no other side. Not this way. Because what you're doing isn't sustainable. You can't will yourself through genuine depletion. You can't discipline your way out of exhaustion. You can't bootstrap your way to restoration. The body doesn't work that way. The mind doesn't work that way. Human beings are not machines that can run indefinitely on determination alone. We have limits, real, physical, psychological limits. And when we reach those limits, we need to rest, not as a reward for working hard enough, not as something we've earned through sufficient suffering, but as a basic requirement of being alive. Yet somehow we've created a culture where rest is seen as optional, a luxury, something for the weak or the privileged or the lazy. Everyone else is hustling, grinding, pushing through their exhaustion, so you should too. Everyone else seems to be managing, seems to be keeping up. So your inability to do the same must be a personal failing. You look around and see people who appear to have infinite energy, who are always doing, always achieving, always moving forward. And you wonder what's wrong with you that you can't do the same. But here's what you're not seeing. You're not seeing the crashes that happen behind closed doors. You're not seeing the medication people take to keep functioning. You're not seeing the relationships that suffer, the health problems that develop, the mental breakdowns that eventually come. You're seeing the performance, the carefully curated image of tireless productivity. You're not seeing the cost, and so you judge yourself against an impossible standard, a fiction, and find yourself lacking.
Before we continue, many of you have been asking for something longer, something with actual practices you can use in daily life. So check out the 3-hour audiobook that takes everything we explore in these videos and gives you the tools to actually work with it. Because here's the thing, intellectual understanding without practical application just keeps you spinning in your head. You need both, the insight and the practice, the philosophy and the daily work that makes it real. This audiobook gives you that. 3 hours of deep wisdom with practices built in, so you're not just thinking differently, you're living differently. If you're serious about changing how you experience your life, the link is in the description below. Now, let's continue.
The truth is that most people are just as exhausted as you are. They're just better at hiding it, or they haven't hit their wall yet, or they're paying a price you can't see. The ones who seem to have endless energy either have circumstances you're not aware of, or they're headed for a reckoning they don't see coming. Nobody can sustain the pace we're expected to keep. Nobody can be constantly productive, constantly available, constantly on, without eventually breaking down. It's not possible. And yet we keep trying because we've been taught that the alternative, which is rest, which is stopping, which is saying, no, I can't do this right now, that's giving up. But what if it's not? What if rest isn't giving up? What if stopping when you've reached your limit isn't weakness but wisdom? What if the real failure is not in pausing when you need to, but in refusing to pause until you collapse? Because that's what happens, you know. When you won't listen to the whispers of your exhaustion, when you ignore the gentle signals that you need to slow down, eventually your body makes the decision for you. You get sick. You burn out completely. You have a breakdown. The rest happens anyway, but now it's not rest, it's emergency shutdown. And it takes so much longer to recover from that. Think about how we treat rest in every other context. When you're sick, genuinely ill, nobody questions that you need to rest to heal. When you're injured, everyone understands that rest is part of recovery. But emotional exhaustion, mental fatigue, the soul-deep tiredness that comes from pushing too hard for too long, somehow that doesn't count. Somehow that's not legitimate. You can't call in sick for being tired. You can't take time off for depletion. You're expected to just push through, to manage, to cope, and maybe you've been doing that. Maybe you've been managing and coping and pushing through for so long that you've forgotten what it feels like to not be exhausted. Maybe tiredness has become your baseline, your normal state, and you barely remember what it was like to wake up feeling rested, to move through your day with energy, to have something left at the end of the day for yourself. Maybe you've been running on empty for so long that empty feels normal, and the idea of actually filling back up seems impossible, unrealistic, like something that happens to other people but not to you. But here's what you need to understand. You are allowed to rest, not because you've earned it, not because you've worked hard enough or suffered enough or pushed yourself to the absolute brink, but simply because you're a human being, and human beings need rest. It's not a luxury. It's not optional. It's as fundamental as food, as water, as air. You cannot function without it. And the fact that you're so exhausted right now, the fact that you're barely holding on, that's not a sign of your weakness. It's a sign that you've been denying yourself something essential for far too long. So let's talk about what rest actually is, because I think we've gotten confused about this. Rest is not just the absence of work. It's not just stopping one activity to start another. It's not scrolling through your phone or watching television or any of the dozen ways we try to distract ourselves from our exhaustion without actually addressing it. Real rest is deeper than that. It's a fundamental letting go, a release of the constant effort that you've been making just to keep yourself upright. Real rest means stopping completely. Not stopping while still thinking about all the things you should be doing. Not stopping while feeling guilty about stopping. Not stopping while planning your return to activity. But actually stopping, letting yourself be still, allowing your whole system to finally drop the burden it's been carrying. And for most of us, this is terrifying. Because when we really stop, when we really let ourselves rest, we have to feel everything we've been running from. The exhaustion, yes, but also the sadness, the disappointment, the grief, the anger, all the emotions we've been too busy to feel. This is why so many people resist rest even when they desperately need it, because rest requires surrender. It requires admitting that you can't keep going, that you've reached your limit, that you need help, that you're not superhuman. And we've been taught that surrender is weakness, that admitting limitation is failure, that needing help is shameful. So we'd rather destroy ourselves than rest, rather burn out completely than admit we're tired. But surrender is not weakness. Surrender is intelligence. It's your system's wisdom recognizing that what you're doing isn't working, that you can't continue on this path, that something has to change. When you surrender to rest, when you finally stop fighting your exhaustion, you're not giving up on your life. You're actually giving your life a chance to recover, to restore, to find its natural rhythm again. You see, the exhaustion you're feeling, it's not the enemy, it's a messenger. It's your deeper intelligence trying to get your attention, trying to tell you that something is wrong, that the way you're living isn't sustainable, that you need to change course. But instead of listening to the message, we shoot the messenger. We fight the exhaustion with caffeine, with willpower, with discipline, trying to override what our body is telling us. And the exhaustion gets louder, more insistent, until finally it's screaming at us and we have no choice but to listen. What would happen if you listened sooner? What would happen if when you first noticed the tiredness, the depletion, the sense of running on empty, you actually paused? Not forever, not giving up on your responsibilities or abandoning your life, but just pausing long enough to let yourself recover, to let your system restore itself, to remember what it feels like to have energy, to have capacity, to have something to give. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking you can't. You have too many responsibilities, too many people depending on you, too much that has to get done. If you stop, everything will fall apart. The world will end. You'll lose everything you've worked for. And maybe there's some truth to that. Maybe there are real consequences to resting. But what are the consequences of not resting? What happens if you keep going until you break completely? Because that's the trajectory you're on. And when you break, when you burn out entirely, when your body shuts down or your mind gives out, the consequences of that will be far worse than the consequences of choosing to rest now. Besides, most of what we think will happen if we rest, it doesn't actually happen. The world doesn't end. People cope. Things that seemed urgent turn out to be less critical than we thought. And the things that truly matter, the things that genuinely can't wait, somehow they get handled even when we're resting. Because rest doesn't mean abandoning all responsibility. It means being selective about what you give your energy to, being realistic about what you can actually do, being honest about your limits. And here's something interesting. When you actually rest, when you give yourself real time to recover, you come back more capable than you were before. You have clarity that you didn't have when you were exhausted. You have energy that you couldn't access when you were depleted. You make better decisions. You do better work. You show up more fully for the things and people that matter. Rest doesn't make you less productive. It makes you actually productive instead of just busy. But the deepest thing about rest, the thing that makes it so transformative, is what it teaches you about yourself. When you finally allow yourself to rest without guilt, without feeling like you're giving up, you discover something profound. You discover that your worth is not tied to your productivity, that you are valuable even when you're not doing anything, that your existence doesn't need to be justified by constant achievement, that you are enough just as you are, even when you're too tired to do another single thing. This is revolutionary, you see, because the voice that tells you rest is giving up, that voice is operating on a very specific assumption. The assumption is that you're only worth something if you're producing something, if you're achieving something, if you're constantly proving your value through effort and output. But this is exhausting, obviously, because it means you can never rest, never stop, never just be. You always have to be earning your right to exist through what you do. But what if you didn't have to earn that right? What if you were valuable simply because you exist? What if your worth was inherent, not earned? Then rest wouldn't be giving up. It would just be a natural part of being alive. You wouldn't have to feel guilty about it any more than you feel guilty about breathing or sleeping or eating. It would just be something you do because you're human and humans need rest. And when you really get this, when you really understand that your value isn't dependent on your productivity, everything changes. You can rest without guilt. You can stop without feeling like a failure. You can take care of yourself without having to justify it. You can listen to your body's wisdom instead of overriding it with willpower. You can live in a way that's actually sustainable instead of constantly pushing yourself to the edge of collapse. This doesn't mean you never work, never try, never push yourself. It means you do those things from a place of fullness rather than depletion. You work because you have energy to work, not because you're forcing yourself through exhaustion. You try because you're genuinely interested and engaged, not because you're trying to prove your worth. You push yourself because you're excited about growth, not because you're terrified of being seen as lazy. And here's the beautiful paradox. When you give yourself permission to rest, when you stop treating rest as giving up and start treating it as necessary, you actually need less rest because you're not getting to the point of complete depletion anymore. You're listening to the early signals, taking breaks before they become emergency shutdowns, maintaining yourself instead of running yourself into the ground and then trying to recover. So if you're exhausted right now, if you're barely holding on, if every part of you is asking for rest, but you're afraid that resting means giving up, I want you to hear this. Rest is not giving up. Rest is how you keep going. It's not weakness, it's wisdom. It's not failure, it's fundamental. You're not lazy for needing it. You're human for needing it. And you deserve it, not because you've earned it, but because you exist, because you're here, because you're tired. And that's enough. That's more than enough. That's everything. So rest, really rest. Not the guilty half rest where you're physically still but mentally racing. Not the performative rest where you're trying to prove to others or yourself that you can relax. But real, deep, surrendered rest. Let yourself stop. Let yourself be tired. Let yourself need what you need without apologizing for it, and trust that this isn't the end. It's not giving up. It's not quitting. It's how you begin again, restored, renewed, ready, not because you've forced yourself through, but because you finally allowed yourself to stop.
You see, living merely to await a brilliant tomorrow is the most refined way to steal one's own life. Imagine you're walking up an endless staircase. In Latin, gradus means step, and we call the years of schooling grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, then graduation, gradus, gradus, gradus. You climb and climb, as if each step were a promise of something greater. Finally, when you stand at the very top, perhaps as the chairman of a massive corporation, you suddenly feel a strange emptiness. You've conquered everything, but now what? There are no more steps to climb, and since you were never taught how to pause, to breathe, to feel this moment, you become lost in your own victory. Our education system, with all its seriousness and structure, never guides you on how to exist right in the breath of the present. It only trains you to postpone joy, to push everything into a vague future. Then one day, when you're exhausted from all those gradus, an insurance agent knocks on the door and whispers, "I have the perfect thing for you, a retirement plan. Just be patient until you're 65, when you leave the work grind, and you'll truly live, truly enjoy." Enjoy what? Exactly. With prostate pains, hormonal changes, dentures, and all the annoyances of old age. That's an empty promise, a way to extend the deferral of life. The art of living in the eternal moment, what people call now, is never taught in classrooms. Why? Because it's seen as irresponsible, lazy, lacking ambition. But listen, enjoying life isn't a luxury. It's the most basic human duty. If you don't learn how to do it, you'll become a burden to yourself and the world around you. You'll grow aggressive, seek to seize, manipulate others, turn into a power-mad tyrant, all because you haven't grasped the simple, cheap secret of being fully present in this second. In truth, sustaining a human life doesn't require that much energy. Think about it. How much food is enough? What do you wear to cover and warm yourself? How much space do you need to dwell? It all boils down to needs so basic, they're almost simplistic. And that simplicity opens the door to savoring the most refined things. Watching a raindrop slide down the window pane, feeling how it curves, how light refracts, how it merges with the world outside. That's a free performance, a masterpiece of the universe. But if you tell someone you're entranced by it, they'll shake their head. Are you crazy? Why not do something more important? More important here means what? It means causing disruption, intervening, progressing. We're indoctrinated with the idea that a person's value lies in changing the world, in pushing everything forward. We confuse natural growth, like trees growing, with progress as defined by humans. Without a grand project, without bustling activity, without future goals, you're labeled lazy, useless. But those who don't chase the future say, you're the crazy ones. You work to accumulate for a tomorrow that never comes, while we live fully today. Look at how a traditional Chinese person works. He labors just enough to have money, then stops, goes to a tea house, gambles a bit, smokes a pipe, or simply wanders admiring the scenery. We call that irresponsible, not maintaining the world properly. But perhaps that way of living is the true maintenance. Perhaps we, with our Protestant work ethic of ceaseless labor, with the belief that everything must be controlled, must progress, are the ones destroying the planet. We eradicate diseases, extend lifespans, but end up creating nuclear bombs to wipe it all out. That's the logical outcome of living for the future, promising forever, and when there's nothing left to promise, only destruction remains. Peoples untouched by the whirlpool of politics, Native American tribes, indigenous Mexicans, Africans, don't understand us, and we don't understand them, because they have no desire for what we call an ideal society. A few were convinced, like in Japan. They plunged into Western-style industrialization, and now cities like Nara, Osaka, Kobe are choked in smog, Tokyo a chaotic nightmare. They're reaping the consequences of chasing the illusion of the future. In the Hindu worldview, time is a cycle called yuga, starting from a golden age, then gradually declining, everything just unraveling over the ages. That's a reminder, escape the wheel of time, escape that rat race. This very idea underlies the political philosophy of redirection that I propose. Lead Western people out of history, out of the belief that we're in a process leading to something better forever. In reality, that process only leads to ever greater destruction. Live a timeless way of life, indefinite, far more appealing than a life devoted to time. Technology isn't the enemy. It brings the power to completely eliminate poverty. But if we view technology through the lens of history, as part of unending progress, it will fail. The distribution problem of wealth from technology isn't material, it's psychological. People are hypnotized by money, seeing it as having intrinsic value instead of just a symbol. Imagine a cosmic joke. Money, which we worship like a god, is really just numbers dancing in ledgers. Ramakrishna once said gold is one of humanity's great calamities, not because the metal shines, but because we mistake the symbol for reality. There's a funny story I like to retell. Long ago, banks around the world got tired of shipping physical gold across oceans, so they set up a central island in the Pacific. All the gold was gathered there, in a massive vault. For exchanges, they'd just push carts of gold down a short street between branches. Everything ran smoothly for a decade. Then one day, the bank owners brought their wives and kids to visit the island. Threw a grand party. They checked the books. Perfect. Finally, the kids clamored, "Dad, show us the gold." The vault managers started stammering, sweating. It's a bit difficult. It needs some preparation." The bank owner barked, "Nonsense. Show the kids the gold now." Finally, the truth came out. 7 years earlier, a submarine earthquake had swallowed the entire vault. But don't worry, they still recorded exactly how much gold each side owned in the books. So the gold was gone, but the value remained. On paper, we laugh uproariously, but that's exactly how the world works today. Money isn't gold, isn't resources, isn't real wealth, just promises, signs, collective magic. The US dollar prints. The United States government promises to pay $1. Pay with what? Another piece of paper. Money is debt, credit, packaged faith. The problem isn't lack of food, housing, clothing, technology produces in surplus. The problem is we're hypnotized by numbers on bank screens. We burn food in America while children starve in India, not because of shortage, but because the books don't balance. That's a refined form of madness. We can feed the whole planet, but let millions starve just for a symbol. The solution sounds equally mad. Reverse taxation. Instead of collecting from people, issue credit, but credit tied to actual total output, not phantom gold or empty promises. Then everyone can exchange what they create without monetary barriers blocking them. This isn't an economic issue. It's psychological. We're trapped in the illusion called Maya in Indian philosophy, the veil over reality. The future is part of that veil. We live as if tomorrow is when life really begins. Imagine you're a donkey with a fishing pole around your neck, a carrot dangling at the end right in front of your nose. You walk and walk, the carrot always there, always in reach, but never touched. That's the perfect image of modern man. We chase the future, chase retirement, chase when I'm rich then, when I retire then, when the kids are grown then, and when you finally bite the carrot, achieve the goal, you realize it's just a plastic fake, or worse, it's long withered. Classical Eastern people don't fall into this trap. They work just enough to live, then stop. They don't see work as life's purpose, but as a means. A Japanese blacksmith might spend the morning forging a blade, then the afternoon sitting watching cherry blossoms fall. We call that laziness. They call it living. When you're not obsessed with the future, you don't need infinite accumulation. You don't need a big house, fancy car, overflowing closet, because you don't use them to fill an inner void. That void can only be filled by presence, hearing leaves rustle, feeling the warmth of a teacup in your hand, smelling earth after rain. But our society is built on fear of scarcity. We're taught that if we don't accumulate, don't prepare, don't progress, we'll fall into misery. So we run forever, like hamsters on a wheel. And the wheel spins so fast we don't realize we're standing still. Technology advances, the wheel spins faster. We have washing machines, dishwashers, cars, planes, all to save time. Save time for what? To work more, earn more, buy more time savers. the perfect circle of meaninglessness. Meanwhile, a farmer in Bali might spend the day sitting under a coconut tree, watching waves crash. He has no insurance, no retirement fund, no 5-year plan. But he has what we've lost, peace in this moment. He doesn't wait for tomorrow to live, because he knows tomorrow is just a notion. Today is all he has, and today is enough. We need a revolution not in politics, not in economics, but in perception. Redirect people away from history, away from the story that we're progressing toward a future paradise. History is a linear tale, from primitive to civilized, from poverty to prosperity, from war to peace. But reality isn't linear. Reality is cyclical. Birth, dwelling, change, extinction. Every empire collapses. Every technology obsolesces. Every future promise vanishes. Only this moment is real. Technology can be a tool for liberation, if used right. Imagine, machines do all heavy work, automate food production, energy, housing. People don't need to work 8 hours a day. We could work 2 hours or nothing at all and still have enough. But for that to happen, we must abandon the illusion of money as a measure of value. We must abandon the belief that hard work is moral. We must learn to live without future goals. Now let's step together into an imaginary garden. Not a manicured Versailles type, but a wild garden where grass grows haphazardly, flowers bloom by season, and no one bothers to prune. Here, time isn't the enemy, it's a companion. A butterfly lands on a petal. You stop to watch, not to record or photograph, but just because it's happening. That's timeless living. No schedule, no destination, only presence. But this garden isn't far away. It's right in the breath you're taking, in the bird song outside the window, in the feel of your hand on the wooden table. Our society fears that garden. We're taught that without plans, goals, a mission, life is meaningless. Try telling your boss you want a day off to watch clouds drift. He'll think you've lost your mind. Try telling friends you don't need a promotion, a bigger house. They'll worry about your future. We're imprisoned in an invisible jail with bars made of promises. Just try a little harder and you'll be happy. But that little harder lasts a lifetime and happiness dangles out of reach. Look at how children play. A 3-year-old can spend hours stacking Lego, not to build the world's tallest tower, but for the joy of each brick clicking. It doesn't think about growing up to be an architect. It has no concept of wasted time. Then we adults step in and teach. Stop playing. Go study so you can succeed later. We strip away their wild garden, replace it with an industrial field, rows upon rows, straight, efficient, but soulless. We adults once had that garden too, but lost it. We replace natural joy with conditional joy. I'll be happy when I have a degree, when I have a partner, when I have a house, when I have kids, when I retire. Each time we achieve, we set a new condition. That's how the ego, hypnotized by time, operates. In Taoist philosophy, Lao Tzu said, "The one who knows enough is rich." Not rich from owning much, but rich from needing nothing more. The Taoist elder's garden is just a thatched hut, a pine tree, a stream. But he sits there, smiling at drifting clouds, feeling he owns the universe. Technology, used rightly, can return the garden to us. Imagine a world where robots plant rice, machines weave cloth, solar power provides free electricity. People don't work to live. They work if they want, or do nothing. A painter paints because colors move him. A musician plays because sounds make him alive. No one asks, how much does your art contribute to GDP? No one measures life's value in work hours. That's not far-fetched utopia. It's possible today if we dare abandon the illusion of earning a living. But to abandon, we must face the greatest fear, that if we don't run, we'll fall into the abyss, that if we don't accumulate, we'll starve, that if we have no goals, we'll be empty. These fears are nurtured from childhood. Study hard for a good job later, save so you don't suffer later, work hard to rest later, all based on the premise that the present isn't enough, that only the future is worthwhile. But what is the future? It's a notion, a ghost. When you reach that future, it's become the present, and you need a new future. In Zen, there's a famous koan. Before enlightenment, I chopped wood, carried water. After enlightenment, I chopped wood, carried water. Nothing changes outside, but everything changes inside. Work is no longer a means to something. It is itself. Chopping wood is chopping wood. Carrying water is carrying water. Watching rain is watching rain. No, so that later. That's timeless living. Every action self-perfect, needing no reason beyond itself. Try a small experiment. For 10 minutes, do nothing. Just sit, breathe, look. No phone, no music, no thinking about to-do lists. At first you'll fidget. The brain will scream, wasting time, do something useful. But if you persist, a magical moment comes, stillness. You realize that without doing, you still exist, still complete. Those 10 minutes aren't lost. They're 10 minutes you truly lived. Our society doesn't teach this experiment. Schools teach math, literature, science, all aimed at later. No one teaches, today, sit still and feel your heartbeat. No one teaches, eat a bite of rice and really taste it. We're trained into efficient machines, but not into humans. The result? We can build rockets to Mars, but can't sit still for a minute without guilt. A friend once told me about his grandfather, a central Vietnamese farmer who only knew plowing fields, planting rice his whole life. No TV, no radio, no concept of retirement. Every evening he sat on the porch, smoked a water pipe, watched the moon, asked, "Do you have any dreams?" He laughed. "What are dreams? I have rice to eat, a place to sleep, the moon to watch. Enough." We laugh at his spiritual poverty. But perhaps we're the poor ones because we don't know enough. Technology can help us return to the garden, but only if we change our view. Instead of using machines to produce more, use them to need less. Instead of building factories for jobs, build parks for people to play. Instead of inventing apps to save time, invent ways for people to enjoy time. That's the real revolution. Not changing the outer world, but the inner. Imagine a morning without an alarm. No bell, no meetings, no urgent messages. You open your eyes, sunlight filters through leaves, and instead of jumping up, you lie there, listening to your own breath. That's not laziness. It's the first time in years you've allowed yourself to be here. Not so that later, not because I must earn a living, just be here. That moment isn't in a 5-year plan, not rated by KPIs, not needing social media posts. It's yours, and only yours. Now, scale that moment to a whole society. A society that no longer uses clocks to measure human value. A society where schools teach kids to watch clouds instead of competing for grades. A society where occupation isn't a business card, but how you choose to express joy. A baker bakes because he loves the smell of rising dough. A storyteller tells because she loves kids' eyes lighting up. No one asks, "What's your salary?" But, does it make you come alive? Sounds fanciful? Actually, we have all the tools to make it real today. Automated agriculture can feed 8 billion with land smaller than a province. Solar, wind, geothermal can provide unlimited power without bills. 3D printers can create homes, clothes, tools in hours. The problem isn't scarcity, but distribution. And distribution is stuck in the money maze. Money is no longer a medium of exchange. It's become the end. We work for money, use money to buy time, then work to make up lost time. The perfect circle of madness. Break the circle with a simple idea. Universal credit tied to real output. Everyone gets enough credit to live comfortably. Not to be rich, but to be free. This credit doesn't accumulate. No interest, no debt. It's created corresponding to actual goods and services society produces. Want bread? Yes. Want a house? Yes. Want to learn painting? Yes. No one has to earn it by selling 8 hours of life daily. Work becomes choice, not obligation. An engineer might spend 3 months on clean energy research, then 6 months fishing. A teacher might teach in winter, wander admiring flowers in summer. No one gets fired for inefficiency. Efficiency is measured by joy, not profit. But for this to happen, we must abandon 2 great illusions. 1, the future is where we'll live. 2, money is the measure of value. The first illusion we've discussed much. The future is the carrot on the stick. When you get there, it's past, and you need a new carrot. The second is subtler. We believe a piece of paper, a screen number, has power to decide who eats, who sleeps, who lives. But money is just collective belief. If the world agrees a seashell is money, it is. If the world agrees universal credit is fair, it will be. The problem isn't technical. It's that we haven't dared to believe. Try a thought experiment. Suppose tomorrow all money vanishes. No dollars, euros, yen. Only goods. Rice, cloth, houses, cars. What do? You barter. I give you a sack of rice. You give me a meter of cloth. I fix your roof. You teach my kid math. We'd quickly realize value lies in actions, not symbols. Money is just simplifying exchange at scale. But when scale distorts reality, when someone starves beside a granary because no money, it's no longer a tool, but chains. Technology can replace those chains with direct exchange. Blockchain, AI, IoT sensors can track real output and distribute credit instantly. No central banks, no governments taxing. Everyone has a digital wallet tied to basic needs. Want more? Create value, not by working hard, but by doing what you love. A good song, a joke, a beautiful garden, all value. AI calculates and distributes. No one richer from hoarding, no one poorer from laziness. Wealth becomes ability to enjoy, not to own. In that world, retirement ceases to exist because no one works waiting to retire. Kids don't learn for jobs, but to understand the world. Elders aren't shoved into nursing homes, but invited to tell stories under trees. Artists don't starve because market doesn't need. Scientists don't beg grants to prove economic benefit. Everyone does because that's how they breathe. And when we no longer run, we'll discover a secret. Time isn't a resource, but space to live. Each moment is a small universe. Watching dew on a leaf isn't entertainment. It's meditation. Hearing music isn't pastime. It's communion with the infinite. Eating a meal isn't fueling. It's a ritual thanking earth and sky. When you live like that, you don't need rest because you've never worked in the old sense. You just are. Finally, return to the wild garden. The butterfly still lands on the flower. Clouds still drift. You sit there, no reason, no purpose. And in that moment, you realize this isn't a break between tasks. This is humanity's real work, presence. All the gradius, all the promises, all the carrots.
Not long ago, I spoke with a young man. He sat across from me, leaning forward in his chair, fidgeting with his hands, as though still running, even while seated. There was nothing particularly unusual about him. He was not a failure, nor a beggar, nor a saint. He was, in many respects, the kind of man you might pass on the street and not think twice about. He had a decent job, friends who liked him, a family who cared for him. But underneath the surface of his life, there was a deep and gnawing unease. As he spoke, I noticed his eyes kept darting around the room, as though chasing some invisible fly. He told me, I can't remember the last time I felt present. Even when I sit with my child, laughing, I find myself worrying about bills. Even in bed at night, I'm planning the next week, the next year. I don't feel here. I feel somewhere else. And you see, I told him something I'll tell you as well. His story is not his alone. It belongs to every one of us. In fact, I promised him that I would share it, not because his story is dramatic or unique, but precisely because it is ordinary. It is the common story of human beings in the modern world. But I won't tell you the ending just yet, because the part that matters most can only be understood once we take the journey together. The ending only makes sense if you walk with me through the questions that haunted him, and perhaps haunt you as well. So let us set his story aside for now, like a bookmark placed in a well-worn book. We will return to it before long. Now, let us ask the question, why is it that the present moment, which is all we ever truly have, feels so difficult to remain in? It should be the most natural thing in the world. After all, where else could you possibly be? You are not in yesterday, except in thought. You are not in tomorrow, except in imagination. In reality, you are here breathing, listening. Life is unfolding before your very eyes. And yet, for some reason, we resist it. We slip away from now as though it was something dangerous. The young man, when he sat at the dinner table with his child, should have found delight in the simple sound of laughter, the warmth of food, the ordinary blessing of being alive. But instead, his mind buzzed with the unfinished tasks of the day, the upcoming worries of the week, the endless pressure to prepare for a life he had not yet lived. And so it is with us. We live in the present as though it were a waiting room for the future. The mind whispers, not this, something else, something more. Why? Why do we resist what is, in fact, the only reality? It is because the present moment is too real, too raw, too unedited. To be here fully means to face yourself without distraction, to admit that this is your life, not tomorrow, not someday, but now. And that realization frightens us. Because if this moment is all there is, then there is no more postponing your happiness. There is no guarantee of another chance. There is only this. And that feels unbearably final. So we run. We hide in memory. We build castles in imagination. We live in a perpetual elsewhere, convinced that one day, when conditions are just right, we will finally arrive. But life does not work that way. Life is always now, never then. The young man told me that whenever he tried to sit still, to meditate, or simply to be, he felt restless, agitated, almost as though something was wrong. He couldn't bear the silence. He couldn't bear the presence of his own mind. So he reached for his phone, or switched on the television, or threw himself into his work, anything to escape the unbearable weight of being here. And perhaps you know that feeling too. Perhaps you have tried to pause, and within seconds your mind fills with worries or regrets, or that peculiar sense that you should be doing something else. We call it boredom, but what it really is fear. Fear of facing ourselves. This is why so much of our culture is built upon distraction, endless entertainment, constant stimulation, a new headline, a new message, a new piece of information to devour. Because in silence, in stillness, the truth of now comes rushing in, and we find it overwhelming. But I want you to notice something subtle. To resist something is already to be in relationship with it. The very fact that you feel restless in the present moment means you are already brushing against it. The discomfort is not proof that you are far away, it is proof that you are close. Like standing at the edge of the ocean, where the waves lap at your feet, the resistance is a sign that the water is near. Now, I must pause here, because I want to say something important. If you have ever felt this restlessness, this inability to stay present, you are not alone. And this is why I speak at all. We are building, slowly, a small circle of people willing to look at these questions together, to admit the difficulty and not run from it. If you feel resonance with this, then you are already part of that circle. The resistance we feel toward the present is not simply personal, it is cultural. From childhood, we are trained to chase. We are taught that life is about progress, about becoming, about achieving. We delay gratification, we set goals, we measure ourselves by the future. And so when someone says, be here now, it feels almost like nonsense. It feels unnatural, because we have been conditioned to believe that the real treasure always lies just over the next hill. But what happens when we actually reach the hill? Have you noticed? The goal achieved, the desire fulfilled, the box ticked, how quickly the satisfaction fades. And once again, the mind says, not this, something more. This is the cycle the young man found himself in. He would complete a project at work, only to feel anxious about the next one. He would save some money only to feel it was never enough. He would sit with his family only to feel guilty that he was not planning better for their future. The poor fellow was never here, and so he was never at peace. But there is a hidden gift in this recognition. For the very dissatisfaction you feel with running endlessly forward is itself the beginning of awakening. To notice that you are not here, to see clearly that you are resisting, is already a step closer to presence. It means you have begun to wake from the dream of elsewhere. And so I said to the young man, what you seek is not in the distance, it is not in tomorrow, it is not in the perfection of your plans. It is right here, in the very moment you are running from. He shook his head. Of course, he said he couldn't see it. That is natural. Because the truth of this cannot be given in words. It must be discovered in experience. That is why his story does not end here, for his discovery came later in an unexpected moment, and I will share that with you. But only once we have looked deeper into the nature of this resistance. For unless you understand why we all flee the present, his story will not make sense. So let us keep walking. Let us examine together why humanity, for all its brilliance, has built its entire life upon the illusion of elsewhere. For until we see the root of this madness, we will never be free. Why is it that we resist the present moment with such persistence? It is because the present moment is the one thing we cannot bend to our will. You may alter the memory of the past in your imagination. You may plan for the future and dream of what is to come. But the present arrives uninvited, unpolished, untamed. It comes in its own clothing, and it does not ask your permission. To surrender to it is to admit that you are not in charge, and this, more than anything else, terrifies us. Think again of the young man, the restless one who could not sit still at his dinner table. He wanted, with all his might, to be a good father, a good worker, a decent man. These are noble desires. But beneath them was the hidden demand for control, the quiet belief that if only he did everything right, life would turn out according to plan. So when he sat with his child, he was not present. Because presence admits uncertainty, and uncertainty is unbearable for the mind that seeks control. But here lies the paradox. The only true stability comes from releasing our grip on control. The river cannot be conquered by trying to dam it up. It is far too powerful, too alive. The river teaches you only one way: to float, to let go, to allow yourself to be carried by its current. In the same way, the present moment becomes not frightening, but wondrous when you stop resisting its flow. The young man, in his restless evenings, imagined that if he let go of striving, he would collapse into passivity. He worried that if he stopped planning, he would fail his family. Won't I lose my drive, he asked. Perhaps you've asked this yourself. It is a common fear. But you see, when you release the exhausting grip of control, you do not lose energy, you gain it. You stop leaking your life force into endless anxiety. Instead, your actions rise up naturally, like a spring bubbling from the ground. You dance, not because you must, but because you are moved by the music itself. Now, pause for a moment and notice something. You are listening to these words right now. This, in itself, is proof that you can give your attention wholly to one thing. You may already feel, however faintly, that something in this reflection resonates with your own life. And this recognition is important, because when you find yourself saying, yes, I know this, you are not just hearing me, you are hearing yourself. That resonance is the thread that ties us together. And you see, that is what this little circle is about. We gather here not as isolated minds, but as a kind of quiet community, reminding one another of what is easily forgotten, that there is no someday, there is only today. But let us return to the man, for his story is the key. One evening, after a long day at work, his mind buzzing with the usual anxieties, He sat down to dinner. His child climbed into his lap, laughing about some small and silly thing, as children do. For a moment, the young man's mind began to slip away, drifting back into bills, into deadlines, into plans. But then something remarkable happened. He caught himself. He saw with piercing clarity that he was about to miss this very moment. And instead of letting his mind run, he stayed. He simply stayed. For a few breaths, he allowed himself to drop the resistance. And in those breaths, he felt the warmth of his child against his chest, heard the laughter as though for the first time, smelled the food on the table, saw the ordinary miracle of life unfolding in front of him. And he wept. He wept because he realized that he had been running from this for years. The present had not been absent. It was always here, waiting patiently. The only thing missing was his willingness to arrive. When he told me this later, he said it felt like falling into a river, terrifying at first, but then strangely liberating. He discovered that life did not collapse when he let go of control. In fact, it became fuller, richer, more alive than he had ever known. He discovered that the very thing he had been chasing, peace, contentment, joy, was not in the distance at all. It was in the simple act of being here. And this is where the teaching comes alive. For the resistance you feel toward the present moment is not an enemy, it is a teacher. The restlessness, the agitation, the endless chase, these are not signs that you are broken. They are signs that you are human. They are the invitation to awaken. So I say to you, do not condemn yourself for resisting. Notice it. Hold it gently. Realize that in the very act of noticing, you have already stepped closer to presence. The resistance is like the ringing of a bell, reminding you that now is calling. And here is the secret the young man discovered. Once you begin to allow even a sliver of the present in life, rushes in to meet you. You need not force it. You need only stop running. Now, you might ask, what does it mean to live this way? It does not mean abandoning plans or refusing to care for tomorrow. It means not using tomorrow as an escape from today. You may plant seeds, but you do not live in the harvest. You live in the planting itself. You may dream, but you do not flee into dreams. You root yourself here in the ordinary miracle of breath and laughter and sunlight. And the wonderful thing is that when you do, the future often takes care of itself, because the best preparation for tomorrow is not anxiety today, but presence today. From presence, wise action arises. From presence, you respond to life rather than react to it. The young man learned this slowly, not in one grand epiphany, but in countless small moments. Each time he noticed his mind running away, he gently returned, like a father guiding a child back to the table. And each time, he found that the present was not frightening after all. It was tender. It was alive. And so it is with you. The door back to now is never locked. It does not require years of effort. It requires only the willingness to step through it, again and again, whenever you remember. And perhaps in this very moment, you can feel it. The weight of the chair beneath you, the rhythm of your breathing, the simple fact of being alive. This is the doorway. And once you notice it, you are already through. Now, before we close, I want to say this. What you and I are doing here is not an isolated act. It is part of something larger. More and more people are beginning to wake from the dream of someday. And in that awakening, we are forming a kind of invisible community, a gathering around the fire of presence. You may not see the others, but you are not alone. We are all here together in this moment. And that, perhaps, is the greatest gift. Because the young man's story is not only his, it is yours, it is mine, it is the story of every human being who has ever wrestled with the restless mind and discovered At last, the peace of simply being. So let me leave you with this. The ending of his story is not an ending at all. It is a beginning. For every time you choose to arrive in the present, you begin again, and life, in its inexhaustible generosity, will always meet you here. If you're hearing these words, it isn't by mistake. This moment found you exactly when it needed to, not a second too soon, not a moment too late. Life has a way of arranging such meetings when the noise begins to settle just enough for you to notice its whisper. Perhaps you were looking for something tonight, or perhaps you stumbled here without knowing why. But nothing truly stumbles. Everything arrives with a certain rhythm, like the wave that reaches the shore precisely when the tide decides it's time. We like to believe we choose what we see, what we listen to, what we pay attention to. Yet, sometimes it feels more truthful to say that life chooses for us that certain ideas, certain voices, certain moments seek us out when we're ready to hear them. So maybe you didn't find this. Maybe it found you. And if it did, it's because something inside you is ready to remember. Ready to remember that change is not the enemy, that growth does not have to come with struggle, and that even the smallest shifts can carry you toward a life you can finally breathe in. A lot can change for the good in 6 months, not through obsession or pressure, but through awareness, gentleness, and a willingness to cooperate with what already wants to unfold. 6 months. That's all it takes for the seasons to turn, for a tree to shed and grow anew, for the moon to circle the earth half a dozen times. 6 months is long enough for an old pattern to dissolve and a new rhythm to take root. Yet to the hurried mind, it sounds like an eternity. To the wise heart, it's only a breath. So let us begin not with a plan, but with a pause. Take one slow breath and feel how even this simple act carries you from the person you were a moment ago into someone slightly changed. Every inhale is arrival, every exhale, release. This is the entire secret of transformation written in the language of the body. Take in what nourishes, let go of what no longer serves, and trust the rhythm in between. The first teaching, then, is simple. Do not rush your becoming. You cannot bully the flower into blooming, nor scold the sun into rising faster. Life ripens at its own pace. What matters is not speed, but sincerity. When you give yourself completely to the moment you're in, time becomes an ally rather than a threat. The minutes are no longer something to beat, they are something to inhabit. You see, most people try to change their lives as though they were rearranging furniture, push this here, drag that there, throw out what you don't like. But the deeper kind of change begins in stillness. It starts when you stop treating yourself as a project to be fixed and start seeing yourself as a process to be understood. 6 months of honest observation, noticing your reactions, your habits, your hidden fears, will do more than 6 years of self-improvement performed out of guilt. The second teaching is awareness. Not the strained awareness of someone trying to meditate perfectly, but the soft kind, the awareness that simply notices. Notice when you tighten, notice when you breathe freely, notice what brings lightness to your chest and what contracts it. Awareness doesn't demand that you act immediately. It only asks that you see clearly. And clarity, all by itself, begins to move mountains. You might say, but noticing isn't enough. I need to do something. Yet the truth is, most of our doing springs from confusion. We act before we understand, and then we wonder why the results look the same. The power of awareness is that it lets right action emerge naturally, the way a path appears once the fog lifts. 6 months of honest noticing will reveal more direction than a lifetime of anxious decision-making. The third teaching is gentleness. Real growth is tender, not violent. The seed breaks open not because it is forced, but because the conditions invite it. So be gentle with your timing. You are unfolding exactly as you must. Gentleness is not laziness. It is intelligence, the intelligence of the universe that knows how to turn an acorn into an oak without rushing. When you replace self-criticism with curiosity, life begins to cooperate with you instead of resisting you. The next teaching is presence in the ordinary. Many people chase enlightenment as if it were hidden in some distant temple, when in truth it hides in the small things you overlook. The way sunlight falls on your hands, the sound of water running from the tap, the silence between two breaths. If you give yourself to these, even for a moment, you are already practicing awakening. 6 months of giving your full attention to the simple will make the complex take care of itself. Now, the mind will argue that such small things can't possibly change a life. It wants grand gestures, dramatic transformations, fireworks of self-reinvention. But think of the ocean. It shapes continents grain by grain. Think of music. It's nothing but waves of air, yet it can make you weep. The subtle is not weak, it is foundational. If you honor the subtle each day, you begin to live from the source instead of the surface. The fifth teaching is trust. Trust is the quiet confidence that the universe knows what it's doing, even when you do not. It is understanding that you are being shaped by forces wiser than your plans. Trust is not blind faith, it's intimate cooperation with reality. It's what happens when you stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and begin asking, "What is this showing me?" In 6 months of living with that single shift in question, you would become unrecognizable, not because life got easier, but because you stopped fighting what was already trying to help you grow. And of course, gratitude, the awareness of enough. Gratitude doesn't mean pretending that everything is perfect. It means noticing that perfection isn't required for beauty. The moment you begin to thank the small things, a clear sky, a kind word, the warmth of your own body, you step into abundance. For 6 months, practice this. Whenever you catch yourself complaining, pause, breathe, and name one thing that still supports you. You will find the complaint fades, and in its place, something steady arises, a kind of quiet contentment that doesn't depend on circumstance. Now, someone might say, "But I've tried all this before. I know these ideas." To which I would ask, do you know them, or have you simply heard them? To know a truth is to live it until it becomes the way you breathe. 6 months of living, even one of these truths, sincerely will teach you more than 100 inspirational quotes ever could. And so the invitation is simple. Do less, notice more. Stop demanding that life give you instant proof of progress. The proof is already there, in every breath, every sunrise, every gentle reminder that you are still here, still capable of renewal. You are not late, you are not behind. You are right on time, because time itself is your teacher, not your jailer. Let this next half year be your experiment in trust. Let it be the season in which you stop forcing and start listening. Watch what happens when you replace control with curiosity, tension with patience, judgment with awareness. The change will not announce itself with fanfare. One morning, you'll simply wake up and realize the heaviness you used to carry is gone. You didn't fix it. It simply melted when you stopped feeding it. And when that happens, you will smile, not because everything is perfect, but because you finally understand it never needed to be. You will see that the universe was never testing you, only teaching you to listen. And in that listening, the next 6 months and the rest of your life will take care of themselves. There comes a moment when awareness no longer feels like practice, but presence, when you stop trying to be mindful and simply are. It happens quietly, often without you noticing. You realize one day that the thoughts which once ruled you have softened, that the noise has lost its authority. You still think, you still plan, you still worry from time to time, but the thoughts no longer pull you by the collar. They pass through like weather over a mountain. The mountain does not resist the clouds. It allows them to drift by, knowing they cannot stay. This is what maturity of spirit feels like, not perfection, not constant peace, but a deep familiarity with change. You no longer fear every shift in mood, every season of uncertainty. You begin to see that everything, even confusion, has its place in the dance. 6 months of living this way, of greeting each day as a visitor rather than an obstacle, and you will notice the difference not in what happens to you, but in how you meet it. The great paradox of awakening is that it doesn't make you immune to life. It makes you more intimate with it. The rain still falls, the heart still aches, the losses still come, but suffering changes its texture. Pain is no longer an enemy to flee. It becomes a teacher to listen to. And the listening itself is the release. When you stop running from what hurts, you find that what hurts had something sacred to tell you all along. You begin to see that control was never the source of safety. Control is the mind's imitation of trust, an anxious attempt to replace faith with structure. But life cannot be caged. The more tightly you grip, the more it slips. Yet when you open your hands, everything falls gently into place. Not because you forced it, but because you finally stop disturbing the natural flow. You see, there is a wisdom at work beneath your plans, the same wisdom that turns caterpillars into butterflies, tides into moons, seeds into forests. That wisdom does not need your constant supervision. It only asks that you cooperate by not standing in the way. When you align with that intelligence through stillness, through honesty, through awareness, life begins to move through you effortlessly. You become the dancer who no longer counts the steps, but simply moves with the rhythm. This is what the ancient Taoists called Wu Wei, effortless action, doing without forcing. It does not mean passivity. It means the harmony between what you want and what the moment allows. To act in this way is to feel that life is not something happening to you, but something happening as you. The boundary between the doer and the deed dissolves. You are painting, but also being painted. You are breathing, but also being breathed. If, for 6 months, you practiced only this, the art of letting life breathe through you, you would begin to taste freedom, not as an idea, but as a lived reality. You would wake in the morning not with the weight of things to control, but with curiosity for how the day might unfold. The mind would still whisper its worries, but you would smile at them like an old friend who no longer needs to be believed. And in this space, something miraculous happens. Joy returns. Not the fleeting pleasure that depends on outcomes, but the quiet joy of existing. The kind of joy a child feels watching raindrops race down a window, or the kind that rises for no reason at all while walking alone. This joy is the natural fragrance of presence. It doesn't need an explanation. It is what remains when the noise of striving fades. You may ask, but what about ambition? What about goals? The awakened person doesn't lose direction. They simply stop mistaking the destination for the journey. There's nothing wrong with wanting success, or love, or peace, but you will suffer if you think they live somewhere in the future. All the joy you seek is hidden in how you walk toward them, not in their arrival. 6 months of walking mindfully toward what you love will change your relationship with desire itself. You will no longer chase, you will invite. This is the art of surrender, not giving up, but giving in. To surrender is to recognize that life knows more about life than you do. It is the humility to admit that the same intelligence that orchestrates galaxies might be trusted to handle your next chapter. When you surrender to that intelligence, you stop praying for things to go your way and start asking to see the way things are. That shift alone can dissolve a lifetime of tension, and so you begin to act from stillness instead of panic. You begin to speak from clarity instead of defense. You begin to love without needing to possess. What once felt like effort becomes grace. What once felt like a burden becomes a blessing in disguise. In that simplicity, 6 months can become a lifetime's worth of evolution. Now, there's another illusion worth letting go of, the illusion of progress as linear. You will not rise every day. Some days you'll fall. Some weeks you'll feel lost. But understand, a spiral moves both upward and inward. Growth revisits its lessons, but each time with more awareness. When you see old patterns return, don't call it failure, call it review. The universe is showing you what's left to integrate. 6 months of honoring even your setbacks as sacred will reshape how you see yourself. Instead of punishing your mistakes, you will learn from them like a patient gardener who studies why a flower didn't bloom, not with anger, but with curiosity. You will begin to see that every event, pleasant or painful, was another doorway to understanding. And that understanding, not achievement, is what makes a life fulfilled. Eventually, you will look back on these months and realize that what changed most was not your circumstances, but your relationship with them. The storm didn't stop. You learned how to dance in the rain. The noise of the world didn't quiet. You discovered the silence beneath it. The future didn't become certain. You made peace with uncertainty itself. That peace is freedom, not escape from life, but intimacy with it. And then, at last, the mind relaxes. It no longer needs to prove anything to anyone. You see that life was never asking you to win, but to awaken, to participate, to witness the miracle of being conscious, even for a brief moment, in this endless unfolding of the cosmos. What could possibly be missing from that? So, if these words have found you, let them remind you of something you already know deep down. You are not late, you are not broken, you are not behind, you are precisely where the river needs you to be. The current has carried you here, not to test you, but to teach you how to flow. The coming 6 months will pass, whether you worry or not, whether you struggle or trust. But if you choose trust, if you choose awareness, gentleness, gratitude, then those same 6 months can become the softest revolution of your life. And when the time comes to look back, you will smile, not because everything went according to plan, but because you finally learned to dance with the plan of everything. And in that smile, life will smile back.
You can't ask for change and expect everything to be the same. It sounds obvious, and yet this is exactly what most of us secretly hope for. Think about that for a moment. We say we want a new life, a new beginning, a new self. But secretly, we want it delivered without disturbance. We want the comfort of the old world and the excitement of a new one, both at once. And isn't that what makes us suffer? This strange wish that things improve but nothing be touched? We ask for growth, but hope the ground never shakes. We pray for love, but dread the risk of heartbreak. We want to fly, yet still keep our feet safely on the earth. Life doesn't work like that. Change always rearranges. It doesn't slip quietly into the room while you sleep. It comes like a tide, sometimes gentle, sometimes like a storm, carrying away pieces of who you once were. And the funny thing is, while it's happening, it really feels like a blessing. It feels like loss, confusion, even betrayal. It makes you cry out and ask, why me? Why now? When you ask for change, you are asking for a kind of death. The death of who you were, of how things used to be. And only through that death can something new be born. Every wish is a disturbance. The moment you ask for something, you have already set a ripple into motion. The universe is not deaf, it hears you always. But here is the trick. It rarely answers in the way you imagine. We think asking is like placing an order at a restaurant. You say, I want love, I want success, I want peace, and you expect it to arrive neatly, served on a silver plate. But life is not a waiter. It is more like a teacher. It doesn't hand you answers. It hands you the conditions to discover them. So when you ask for strength, you don't receive strength. Instead, you face difficulties that force you to grow strong. You ask for wisdom, and life doesn't whisper secrets into your ear. It hands you problems, riddles, paradoxes, so that in solving them, wisdom takes root in you. You ask for courage, and suddenly you find yourself standing in front of fear. When you ask for love, you don't receive a flawless angel. You receive another imperfect human, so that through patience, forgiveness, and tenderness, love may grow in you. The universe always answers, but its answers are disguised, wrapped in paradox, often mistaken for curses when in truth they are invitations. This is why so often we cry out, "I asked for light, and all I got was darkness." But the darkness is not punishment. It is the soil in which the light will take root. To ask, then, is dangerous, because you will always be answered, but never in the way your ego expects. And if you are not ready, you might miss the gift inside the disguise. Imagine for a moment that every wish of yours came true the instant you thought it. No waiting, no effort, no uncertainty. You imagine a house. It appears. Another house, another car, another success, all lined up like toys in a row. At first you would feel triumphant, powerful, a God in control of all things. But after the 100th repetition, the thrill would fade, and by the 1000th, it would turn to ash in your mouth, because when everything comes easy, nothing means anything. The first house you build fills you with pride. The second makes you ambitious, but the 1000th, you stop caring. You might even find it more interesting to abandon them all, to sleep under the stars on some quiet mountain, simply because there is still mystery there. The sweetness of life is not in the having, but in the journey of becoming. The chase, the uncertainty, the obstacles, these are not interruptions. They are the very flavor of existence. We forget this when we cry out for ease, for safety, for guarantees. We think we want a life without trouble, but secretly we would be bored to death by it. Like watching a movie where every scene ends happily, predictable, flat, meaningless. The paradox is that challenge, even suffering, is what gives your joy its depth. Without contrast, there is no color. Without shadow, no light. So the universe, in its strange wisdom, protects you from a meaningless life by refusing to make it too easy. It withholds the instant win, not as punishment, but as mercy, because it knows without the climb, you would never taste the summit. Life, at its core, is not a problem to be solved, but a play to be experienced. And like every play, it needs contrast. You cannot know light unless you have tasted the dark. You cannot know joy without having brushed against sorrow. Success means nothing to the one who has never stumbled. Even love, the thing we prize most, shines brightest only after we've known loneliness. This is why challenges are not detours on the road of life. They are the road. They carve depth into us, like rivers carving valleys. They give shape to the landscape of our soul. Without them, we would remain flat, unshaped, undefined. But here's the secret most of us miss. The universe is playful. It is not only teaching, it is also dancing. The struggle you face is not a punishment handed down from above. It is a game in which you are both the player and the prize. Think of it like music. A song without tension, without rhythm, without high and low notes would be unbearable to listen to. It is the rise and fall, the dissonance and harmony that makes it beautiful. Life is no different. So when you ask, why must there be difficulty? The answer is, because without it, you would never feel alive. The unpredictability, the surprises, even the tears. These are the spice of existence. In the middle of all this chaos, the changes, the struggles, the storms, there is something in you that does not move, something that watches. Call it the watcher, call it awareness, call it God within. The name doesn't matter. What matters is that it has always been there, quietly observing, untouched by the drama, waiting for you to notice. When you succeed, it watches. When you fail, it watches. When you cry out in despair, why me? It is still there, unshaken. This watcher is not against you. It learns through you. Every new perspective you gain, every mistake, every triumph becomes part of its expansion. The watcher knows the road, but it does not force your steps. You are free to choose, free to wander, free to fall and rise again. And there are no wrong choices, only lessons. You might think you failed, but to the watcher, you simply learned. You might think you wasted time, but to the watcher, time itself is the lesson. The tragedy is not in choosing wrongly. The tragedy is in refusing to choose at all. By sitting still, blaming the world, blaming others, blaming yourself, because in that stagnation, the dance stops. But the moment you turn inward, the moment you listen, you discover you were never abandoned. That silent awareness was with you in every storm, waiting patiently for you to surrender so it could guide you, and once you recognize it, even the hardest challenge softens, because you no longer fight it alone. There are, you could say, 3 levels of awareness in how we meet life's challenges. The lowest level is blame. Here, everything is someone else's fault. Your parents, your partner, society, the economy, the government, God. Life feels like a conspiracy against you. And while blame may feel comforting in the moment, it locks you in chains, because if everything is someone else's fault, then nothing is within your power to change. The second level is self-blame. This is where most people eventually land. They stop pointing fingers outward and begin pointing them inward. It must be me. I'm the problem. I'm not good enough, not strong enough, not smart enough. And while this feels more mature, it is still a prison, because guilt, just like blame, keeps you stuck, circling endlessly in self-punishment. But there is a third level, the highest. At this level, you blame no one, not the world, not yourself. You simply learn. You fall, you rise, you fall again, and each time you collect the lesson and keep moving. There is no guilt, no resentment, only growth. This is freedom. Not because life suddenly becomes easy, but because you stop wasting energy on resistance. You stop shouting at the storm, and instead learn how to sail in the wind. At this level, every experience, even the painful ones, becomes fuel for your becoming. If you have eyes to see, you begin to notice something astonishing. Nothing you ever asked for was ignored. Every prayer was heard. Every whisper was answered, just not in the way your mind expected. The confusion taught you how to see. The chaos trained you to find stillness within yourself. The heartbreak carved your heart open so that real love could enter. This is the secret we resist the most. Life does not give you the object of your desire. It gives you the transformation required to hold it. Because if you were simply handed love without depth, you would not know how to cherish it. If you were simply handed success without failure, you would not know how to sustain it. If you were simply handed peace without ever facing storms, you would not know how to trust it. What feels like unanswered prayers are in fact the most loving answers of all. Not no, not even not yet, but rather become first, grow into it, then it will be yours. And maybe this is why faith is so hard, because it requires you to believe that the very thing that feels like your undoing is in truth your making. So the real miracle is not that prayers are answered. The real miracle is that they are answered with more wisdom than we would ever dare ask for. Every desire you carry is really a seed. And a seed does not become a tree in an instant. It must be buried, cracked open, broken apart by the soil before it ever reaches the light. This is the part of the journey most of us resist. We want the fruit without the breaking, the harvest without the season of waiting. But life doesn't work like that. You don't just receive your dream. You become the kind of person who can live it, breathe it, carry it. If you want success, life will train you in persistence, discipline, and failure, so that when success comes, you won't collapse under its weight. If you want peace, life will send you storms, so that when peace comes, you'll recognize it not as escape, but as strength. The greater journey is never about collecting things. It is about becoming someone who can dance with uncertainty, who can carry both joy and sorrow without breaking, who can love even when it hurts. And through it all, life will always be shaping you into the person you were meant to become. And all along, the watcher within you, the silent presence, the divine awareness, has never left your side. It was guiding, shaping, and waiting for you to see that you were never alone. So love your challenges, love your lessons, love even the things that break you, because one day you will look back and realize nothing was wasted. Everything was part of the journey, that all along what you thought was against you was secretly working for you. So be at peace, be grateful, and remember, the whole point was always to dance.